Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School.
Hey folks, this week we're going to give you a 101 and we're going to get into the art of mental terror in film. Should be a good ride.
Yeah, let's dive on into it. Ooh. All right, everybody, I am Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Palcher.
And if you like what you see/hear, please like and subscribe. You can find us in all the spaces and places that people find good media. We have all kinds of stuff. We do festivals. We do 101s like we're doing right now. We do punishment reviews, forgotten gems, all kinds of stuff.
Anything to help you with your film history needs. We like framing things in unusual ways. But yes, places and spaces, please go. We love the interaction. Appreciate it.
Yes.
All right, let's get into this 101. It's a pretty unusual one. A little different than what we've done in the past. It's going to be kind of a discussion with probably some examples of what we were talking about when we talk about mental terror. I think there's a variety of ways you can look at this. You can look at it from a visual standpoint of just someone, a visual in a movie, frightening or not, that expresses a character kind of losing their mind or seeing something terrifying that doesn't make sense. But you can also go contextual with the way that people cope with their mental issues and kind of the ways that whether it's a visual component or not, but it's still terror in a way, with someone who potentially is mentally unstable, whether you know it or not. In horror movies, I think horror movies do a really great job of this, because horror movies are a genre that really has never gone away. Like there's at some point superhero movies are going to go away, right? And they won't be a thing anymore, but I feel like horror will still be there and it keeps being reinvented, and that's exciting, especially for a genre that's been around as long as it has, since Nosferatu in the 1920s. Like horror's been around forever, 100 years of film. And I think it works because empathy works in film, right? It that's why we go. It kind of helps us as an audience relate to maybe a potentially unconventional character. And so there's a variety of things here that justify mental terror, but I would love to hear kind of what you're looking for when we're talking about this in this discussion today.
Well, I think that, I'll go back to our two things. Our initial conversation that we had, where I was really looking at like the art of visual terror, and mm-hmm. when I was thinking of this as the concept of visual terror, I wasn't thinking about, and I think my reference was sort of like your Michael Myers or your Jason, right? Where it's like there's something about that
Jaws.
Where it's like mm-hmm. It's very easy to point to the threat and go, okay, on a level from 1 to 10, here's what that threat feels like to me, right? And mm-hmm. and if I that at that point it almost feels like a video game survival level, where you're like, okay, so it's a shark. What do I have? Do I get the spear gun, or do I have a boat, or am I just in the water and I got nothing, right? And so you almost have to like do this quantizing of like what that threat level might be, and that threat level then becomes something that has the possibility to become existential, but on its face is not, because it's a physical threat. Yeah. But when we talk about existential terror is this very different concept. And that's where you started looking at it in terms of, again, the festival we just finished, this sort of like cerebral threat, this mm-hmm. mental threat. And how is that illustrated in film? And then we got into these nuances of it, of when it's just visual versus when it is strictly contextual, right? Mm-hmm. Like the story that's being told to us. If the story that's being told to us is scary, that's on a different level. And I think I'm probably going
For
to
sure.
reference one that isn't on either one of our lists of references, but I'm thinking of something like Johnny Got His Gun. If you remember
Sure.
Johnny Got His Gun, it's like there is the actual physical terror that we're seeing, and that's all in black and white of
Yep.
this poor
Amazing movie.
guy. Amazing movie. This poor young guy who has lost his arms and legs and his face and his mouth and
In
his
war,
ability to
right? Yeah.
communicate in war. Um, uh, Anybody who hasn't seen this has probably seen the music video for Metallica's One. That's where those clips are from, is from Johnny Got His Gun. But there's two different parts to it. One is the actual real terror of this guy who's horribly disfigured and cannot communicate with anybody laying in this hospital bed. But then the existential terror is what's happening inside of his mind. That is this very vibrant, a surrealistic world that our character is walking through.
And that's the ride we go on with him in that
Exactly.
movie, right?
Exactly.
It is very interesting, especially when you look at it from a context of someone who makes a movie that has no experience with, mental health issues or knowing what that terror is actually like versus someone with experience. Because I think you essentially, I think the easy way out probably for someone with no experience is you make and write a horror movie, and then at the end you just say, nope, none of that was real, and there's my movie about mental health, right? I think there's those
Right.
those types of movies out
Totally.
there, and that's probably not fair to the people with mental health issues, and but in some exaggerated circumstances it works. I think something like The Shining is a movie about ghosts with no ghosts, right? Like there's some version of like that out there, but when it really comes down to it, it's about the main character's mental health.
Well, and you talked about empathy a minute ago, and I would say that something like The Shining, where Jack Nicholson's character encounters the woman in the bathroom and is at first turned on and then later repulsed because she changes.
Yep.
It's creepy, but it can't hold a candle to when Shelley Duvall sees the guy in the bear suit. And it can't hold a candle to when the little kid sees the dead twins. And it's because we care more deeply for those characters, and we know they're not insane. From scene one, we're like, Jack Nicholson's insane. Of course he is. Look at him. He's Jack Nicholson. And so,
Yeah.
like, him seeing crazy shit, we're like, he isn't as terrified by it, and so therefore we are not. Whereas for these other characters to be seeing these things, we're as scared as they are because their mental fortitude is our only thread of safety in the film. And I think that empathy plays such a huge part in that. And I think
big
that's
time.
why I really love that you kind of swayed us more into this idea of mental terror. Because I think it can paint with a different kind of brush. And,
Definitely.
and it can say different things.
For sure. And I think, whether we feel the terror aspect from it or not, whatever character we're talking about and all of these movies, how little or small it may be within the movie or large, are going through some kind of mental terror. I think even something like Lars and the Real Girl, where he has a sex doll named Bianca that he carries around town and pretends is his girlfriend, is a version of mental terror, as little as it small may be. Obviously we're talking about a lot of metaphors with most of this here. I think some notable ones are kind of visions of other people, dream sequence, sleep deprivation is a big one. But I also think visual terror, I guess my point is visual terror doesn't always have to be scary and haunting, like we saw in our Cerebral Nightmares Festival. I think also a lot of it depends on that experience versus no experience and just how it's shot in general. Something I have on my list, I guess if I just want to start off here is Melancholia. Lars von Trier is a very, is someone who has gone through depression. He has a depression trilogy with Antichrist, Melancholia, and I believe Nymphomaniac. And so like he has this experience. So when he creates a world like Melancholia that is based generally around this wedding, at least for the first half of the movie. And but the movie's about the end of the world, and he's basing it around this happy event. So Lars von Trier type of thing to do.
Totally.
But we just kind of get into all of these metaphors, and depression can warp your perception of the world, your relationships, time, physicality, like a variety of things. And the slow mo, like beautiful depression and beautiful slow mo, is this opening scene in this movie where we're getting all of these references to past art, and people are running away from things. Like we don't really know the references of the background. Some of them are old paintings. Some of them will come up later in the movie, and it's just this beautiful stuff. There's her Kirsten Dunst running away with the tree limbs, like pulling at all of her limbs at the
Yes.
same time, just like beautiful stuff. Imitations of things that have to do with depression, just this gorgeous thing. But depressive figures are throughout this movie, and we kind of go in and out of this movie with the bride, who this should be the happiest day of her life, but she kind of at certain points gets overwhelmed throughout, and we just go with her and see her dive into this depression, and then come back and the party's still going on, and it seems like it's been like 5 weeks, right?
What a better kind of amalgam for depression than there's a party and you need to act appropriate at the party, but meanwhile a planet is crushing your planet.
Yeah, there's planets colliding.
That is the I mean, like, talk about hitting the nail on the head. It's like that is exactly what clinical depression feels like, as someone who's been there.
For sure. And it's it's not a perfect movie by any means. I have issue with some of it, but undoubtedly gorgeous representations. I think when we were initially talking about this, a good example that you brought up was Tarsum with the cell, and that, I don't know if that's on your list, and I'm stealing one, but like, I thought that was another very similar representation of how once you're inside someone's head, what it can feel like.
Yes. As a good segue, I don't have Tarsum, but I am going to mention him. Okay. The first one I want to talk about is a 2012 film called Excision. Not a perfect film, but a very, very deeply interesting film. It's a horror film written and directed by Richard Bates Jr. And starring Anna Lynn McCord, who is an actress and a model, and most of the time is incredibly beautiful. However, in this movie, she plays a deeply, deeply troubled teenage girl. And boy, they do a hell of a job of making her super unattractive and like the creepy girl in school with like ratty unkempt hair and bad acne, who it's never fully realized what sort of mental disposition is going on with her, but she's probably a psychopath, I would say. And she has these fantasies that include dead bodies and medical procedures, and it's very, very spooky stuff. What's amazing is that in her these sort of like I will put big quotations around sex fantasies that she has as this young teenager, they doll her back up. So you see her looking dowdy and kind of ratty in her day-to-day life, and nobody wants to really pay attention to her. And then she is model gorgeous in these fantasies that she's having. But the fantasies are basically, I wrote down of them being, if you could take Tarsum's The Cell and filter it through the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They are gorgeous, vibrant color, beautifully directed, but the people that she's loving up on and having these moments with are usually dead, and then there's these arterial sprays of blood, like but in these fantasies, she's this goddess. But the movie is also really fun and interesting because even though it gets really dark, first half plays more like a black comedy, horror comedy. Second half goes straight horror. But her mother is played by the former porn actress Tracy Lords, who does an incredible job actually as her mother. And then the leader of or the principal of her school, who's the priest of the school, is played by John Waters. So it's this really subversive, weird film. But these fantasies, these sexual fantasies that she's having, where she's really starting to understand, like, oh, I'm a sexual being, are terrifying. But to her, they're very self-actualizing. Like, they don't scare her at all. They make her feel more empowered. But to us as the audience, they're horrifying. But yeah, so Excision is a weird film. It's not a perfect film, but man, these sort of sexual fantasy moments that she's having are kind of unlike anything I've seen really outside of The Cell, but probably more graphic and terrifying than The Cell.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never heard of that movie, but sounds wild. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's
yeah,
worth a watch. I think it's on Netflix, I believe, but it's worth a watch just to see some shit you've never seen before, I guess I would say.
For sure. To kind of jump back to the contextual side of something, I think you could easily get into something. I don't know. There's a variety of ways you can go, and we don't have to talk about all of these movies in depth. But I think, some great examples are stuff like Tyler Durden and Fight Club. Just the fact that he's sitting around beating himself up, talking to this guy, is a version of mental health, some type of mental health disorder. Just his presence, does that. And I love how the movie plays with that and brings you along for the ride. But then you have, okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say about like, if you wanted to go to a visual representation within that movie, I love a couple of moments of that. One being when Ed Norton's character is like so sleep starved and is watching the video where like all the guys at the hotel are like, welcome, and Brad Pitt's right there in the front going, welcome, along with them. Or when he's scanning the room and we get those little blips of Tyler Durden standing there, right? Like just for one frame.
Yep.
Like those are great moments, nuggets for that kind of idea.
Absolutely, but then you can get in something that's way heavier where you're talking about paranoid schizophrenia, and I'm thinking of something like Jeff Nichols' Take Shelter, where Michael Shannon plays this, he lives in a small town in the South, and he has this obsession with creating the shelter because, basically the end of the world is coming and he wants to protect his family, but it gets so far out that you don't know what's real. And this movie actually does a good job at the end of kind of still leaving that into question a little bit, but the symbol of the shelter itself and just the safety about this unknown monster, an unknown threat that's coming towards us, is really fascinating. But there's no actual, outside of maybe the birds that kind of follow him around, there's very little visual things to go along with the mental tear that he has in this movie.
Those dream sequences are scary as hell, though.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The hands, almost like a zombie movie. These hands reaching in to take his daughter away.
That's right. I forgot about that.
All that stuff is so terrifying. Well, and I would go to Michael Shannon again with something early in his career like Bug. I think that just watching like the ramping up intensity, you think of this idea of like an unreliable narrator, and him having this overbearing, very confident persona on Ashley Judd's character until she also can see the bugs that he's imagining, right? Where it's like he's preyed upon her weaknesses to make her like him. Boy, the claustrophobia that you feel in something like that, right?
Absolutely. Like it's wild to kind of put that in perspective. That movie is not one I had thought of, but I think that's a great example, especially with the taking advantage part. You look at any cult or anything that is looking to prey upon you, they look at your weaknesses and exploit them, right?
Yep.
And bring you in to make you feel special. And so that's outside of the realm of mental health. I think there's also a little fun temporary moments of insanity inside of movies. I'm thinking of Spike Jonze being John Malkovich, when John Malkovich actually goes into his own head, and it's the Malkovich. And he goes into this whole thing, and like that would be frightening for anyone to be inside their own head. And when he gets kicked out on the New Jersey Turnpike, he is pissed. But also, you have to think about it from him being an actor, right?
Yeah.
And thinking of him, who actors are pretty, self-absorbed, right? They're fine being in their own heads. Like, you have to get into your own head if you're going to be a good actor. And actors see themselves that way. So the frightening terror of what that would be like to be inside your own head, and then framing it around that it's an awesome generational actor like John Malkovich.
Do you think that there's I imagine there's a small crowd out there, but I bet there's a subreddit. I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's a subreddit for it that's just fan art of the woman Malkovich with the really large breasts. Where she's ordering and she's like, Malkovich, with the real low cut. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
I gotta say, I'm going with Rule 54. Everybody knows Rule 54. Do you know Rule 54?
No.
Rule 54 of the internet says...
Oh.
Rule 54 of the internet says, whatever sub pop culture reference exists, there is porn of it.
Sure, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to go and say, using Rule 54, I believe there's probably a subreddit that has that big-bosomed Malkovich as the star of a whole series of comic book strips, films, fan fiction, literature, right?
Excellent.
I'm sure.
We'll do some research and find out for everyone.
Okay,
we'll link it in the description.
Yes, right down here. I want to circle back to the cult thing you were talking about for a minute. Talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, and then potentially the drug-induced psychosis mixed in with a cult aspect that could take place.
Are you talking like a Jacob's Ladder kind of thing? I guess that's not really cult as much, but PTSD.
Oh baby, I'm going with Midsummer. I'm going with Midsummer here.
Okay, there you go.
I think Midsummer, Ari Aster's Midsummer. Obviously, we have some horrific tragedies that occur for our protagonist early on, but once she goes with her dipshit boyfriend and their failing relationship to the land of the midnight sun, I guess they've headed to Iceland, and
they do shrooms or something.
Yeah, let's do shrooms. This will be great. Why not do shrooms among all these strangers, and you won't think at all about your dead parents or your crazy ass dead sister. But not only does she start to see flowers and leaves growing out of her hands, but boy, not just the bad trip that she goes on in the next 10 minutes after that, but the rest of the movie. You think about the and here we go, here's a fun term for everybody, pareidolia, which is, right, I mean, we know this is the finding faces in places where there aren't faces, which again, for our protagonist here, who is out in this lush, beautiful countryside in this these woods, the movie itself shows us faces. Probably the most obvious one being once she has been reigned May Queen and is up on the throne, and they're putting her along. You know the image I'm talking about, right?
Of her dress?
No. Well, there is that where the dress is like the little flowers are winking. There is a moment where the congregation is carrying her along, and it's a profile we see of the landscape and the big lush trees behind her. One shot, the big lush trees is her sister's face with the gas mask thing on and her eye all white, made up of the trees. It's in the background there.
Wow.
In
The
fact,
art,
we'll show it right here. But it's one of these things I remember seeing and being like, "Am I losing my mind? I think I might be losing my mind." While
the
watching
art,
it.
the art direction in that movie is insane, and that's really a lot of what we're talking about is the environments these people are in. Also, making a horror movie that takes place in the day the whole time, brilliant, brilliant.
So
Why has that
so
never
brilliant.
been done until 2019? That's wild to me.
Well, I mean, Wicker Man did it back in '76, but still.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, he did. I know you don't love that
The,
movie as much as I do, but I swear by it.
no, I know you do, and I don't mind that. I'm just saying, I was it that movie all shot in the day? I didn't realize that. I guess I
Everything
thought it
that's
was
scary, everything that's scary
Oh.
is.
for sure. Um, I just have a few more to go through here. I think something like Requiem for a Dream is one you have to talk about, where Ellen Burstyn is actually the one who is hopped up on pills. The visual stuff here with the game shows and like the
Fucking
the
fridge.
Tappy. Yeah, the growling fridge.
Oh,
The
God,
Boost
that
by
jumps
Tappy,
out at
Boost
her.
by Tappy,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And what's his name from Happy Gilmore is the
Shooter
game show
McGavin,
host.
yeah,
Shooter
yeah.
McGavin, and she goes through it. She thinks she's gonna be on this game show. She got a call or something in the mail about it, and she's trying to lose all this weight, so she starts taking these pills and truly gets cracked out crazy. In this movie,
So sad. Oh,
it's absolutely sad. But like the visuals of the game show and her, and just the makeup of her, like the white crusty lips and just how skinny she gets in her eyes, and her hair becomes this frayed, and she's trying to look beautiful to be on this game show, and of course she finally gets on it, and you see all the weight loss, and man, it's just wild and frightening. But I think Aronofsky, especially if you look at the other stuff he's done, like Pi, and even something like The Fountain, is I think he's gone through bouts of depression. I think you can see that in his films. I think he's someone who's experienced it along the lines of like Lars von Trier, who could capture it in a
Mother
unique...
almost made it on my list. Mother almost made it on my
Yeah,
list.
same thing.
Even though it's a parable, boy, the paranoia and the way in which he's able to really dig into that in the early scenes in Mother are just are riveting. Yeah.
For sure. And you think about Black Swan, like Natalie Portman's Black Swan, where here it is more visual, and you do get the stuff. And honestly, both of these have to do with eating disorders and weight loss, which is all attached to mental health and mental illness. Specifically Black Swan, the kind of slow reveal of her becoming the swan into the
Growing feathers? Yeah.
even to the point of full transformation at one
Yes.
point, right, where she's going crazy in her head. And but that you slowly get like she pulls out a feather out of her skin. You're like, oh, it just gives you the creeps, and the way they shoot it, and then her eyes kind of start like dilating.
Oh,
and
see, and you can
there's
go
a
to body
full-
horror. You're going
Yeah.
to the body horror aspect, but man, I would even go to one of the most jaw-dropping moments for me in that movie is when she's at the height of really her manic state, and she runs into her childhood bedroom, and all those drawings on the wall start screaming and yelling at her. That is scary as hell, man. That is like just the animation of all these drawings, these sort of chalk drawings that we've seen that she's made over the years. And
That's
we've gotten
right, yeah.
used to them. We've gotten comfortable to them. And all of a sudden they're calling her a whore and a bitch and all. It is
It's a voice of her mother,
Oof.
but yeah, of course, yeah.
terrifying.
Amazing director. Both Von Trier and Aronofsky, I think, are two heavy hitters when it comes to visual terror.
For
At
sure,
least-
I would-
at least for me.
So, and I think both of them owe a big debt of gratitude to the one I want to talk about next, which is definitely Polanski. I think I thought a lot about Repulsion.
Repulsion
and the
for
Tenant.
sure.
I
the
thought
Tenet.
about the like just the paranoia. I mean, obviously Repulsion.
Even
goes
Knife
to
in the Water. Knife in the Water.
Knife in the
I think
Water,
is a good one.
definitely, but those are more ramping up a level of ratcheting up tension, whereas Repulsion goes to these places of like literally the hands coming out of the walls. Right, and that image, you think about that and you go, yeah, when you're talking about the concept of mental health, literal hands coming out of the walls of your hallway so you can't walk down them is so sad and so terrifying all at the same time.
The way that movie's shot too, I think it comes down to the interpretation of the director too, and
Yes.
how they visualize someone going through that, and that's a super important part. But yeah, absolutely, Polanski has his finger tied around mental terror. I think he shows it in a lot of his films.
I have two more.
Okay.
I have two more. Second to last, very quick one, but God effective. A movie that I know is a favorite of both of ours, which is 1 Hour Photo.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's
It's a dream sequence of Robin Williams, who
one.
is this very tightly
Sigh.
wound Psy. Yes, Psy is his character's name. Very tightly wound clerk, who is so pale. It almost as its own inside joke. He's like a poorly developed photograph himself, right? Like there is no richness to him. There is no depth to him. He is this surface of a character, but who becomes obsessed with this family. And he works at this photomat at sort of a Walmart style store. And he has a nightmare where his eyes explode with dark, dark crimson red blood. And he screams and grabs his eyes, and this blood spurts everywhere. And it's a very short little moment, but it is so telling about what's happening under the surface of this otherwise calm,
Sweet,
like quaint character, right? Who speaks in this very friendly, like non-threatening way. For that to happen early in the film, it gives us an oh shit of what's happening under that surface.
I thought you were going the other oh shit moment where he just kind of lets himself into the house that he's kind of stalking and like reads their mail and takes a shit
Takes
in
his shit in their toilet. God, that's
like
brilliant.
and then they cut away and it was a dream sequence but that's what he's dreaming about is this being amongst their things.
I definitely went with the more horrifying of the images, but I think almost as a way to state claim of what he may be capable of. But you're right that for a more nuanced version, that's his fantasy. It's not like having sex with the wife or like going through the little boy's underwear drawer or something really egregious. Instead, it's like taking a dump in their toilet and then like hanging out and drinking a beer and watching football.
Yeah,
like,
I'm part of this house now. I'm part of the family.
Yeah, what a sad fantasy, right? That's your fantasy. The last one that I have is actually the first one I thought of, even before you kind of brought into it this secondary level of mental acuity to the horror, and it is one of the weirdest moments I've ever seen in a thriller, and it scared me more. It still scares me every time I think about it. It scares me.
What is it?
It's not a very well known movie. So it's the 1995 film adaptation of Dolores Claiborne. This is based on
Kathy
the Stephen
Bates?
King. Yeah, Kathy Bates, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Christopher Plummer, based on the Stephen King novel. Now, it's mainly a thriller, a mystery about how Kathy Bates' character may or may not have killed her husband and sort of like the reasons why she may have done it. And some of the movie is stylized. There's a whole sequence with an eclipse of the sun. And so the sky gets blood red, and it's a very interesting sequence, but almost all the rest of the movie is done 100% just straight thriller, nothing stylized, nothing supernatural at all, right? And there is a sequence towards the end of the movie where Jennifer Jason Leigh's character, who's trying to figure out why possibly her mother, Kathy Bates, may have killed her father. And she's on this ferry boat ride. And again, everything's directed totally normally like a regular thriller kind of a movie. And she has this flashback that her father molested her. And she's imagining seeing herself as a little girl on the same ferry with her father when he was younger, and that he molests her, and she's almost this bystander watching it happen. And it is this uncovered memory that she didn't realize she had, and it completely messes with her, and she doesn't know what to do, and so she leaves from outdoor the ferry and goes into the bathroom and is so distraught and runs water over her face. And then she looks up into the mirror in the bathroom and she sees the back of her own head. So when she looks in the mirror, instead of seeing her face, she sees the back, she sees her back. And she tries to reach for the door and she sees the reverse of her own arm reaching for the door. It is the most unsettling, terrifying image where she is so unmoored from her own sense of self that when she looks in the mirror, she sees the back of her own head. It is a fucking terrifying moment in a movie that doesn't play at all with any other supernatural dream sequency stuff in this same way.
It's been so long since I've seen it, but I can't pick out that, but that sounds very frightening. Yes.
Oh my God. You do not see it coming. And when it happens, I just remember jumping up into my seat and grabbing my knees like, what? Why am I seeing that? It's horrible.
That's a trope too that gets used a lot with looking down and looking back and something's there, but the fact that it's behind you and
the
it's
fact
just like
that it's
this
your
weird
own
angle. Oh,
yeah,
that's good. Yeah, that's good.
I mean, talk about being outside of yourself, right? Like it is still hands down one of the scariest little moments out of an otherwise decent, solid, but not super memorable film. But my God, that 5 seconds is just so
awesome.
scary. So yeah, that's my number one.
Awesome. Well, gosh, I feel like we could go on forever. There's so many examples of what we're talking about in mental terror and movies. If you have them, please comment below. Let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you. But yes, please like and subscribe. We're on all the spaces and places. We do festivals every week. So please follow along, play along. And next week, we're going to start our new festival. We're doing David Fincher, folks. Fincher Fest. Fincher Fest.
It's still creepy. We're not done with the creepiness yet. We got another month and a half of creepy, which is going to be great. So yeah.
Bring it on. Bring it on.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, folks. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye. So, what is your least favorite food?
Ooh.
I know you never think about it, right? You think about your favorite, but not your
Sure.
least favorite.
I know you love this food, but it's something that I hate. But Brussels sprouts are up there for me.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that's some pretty classic Dennis the Menace level food dislike. Right? Dad, Mom, Brussels sprouts, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I'll eat anything though for the most part. I mean, I even ate Brussels sprouts the other day. I didn't like it, but I still ate them.
Oh, I love them. Ooh, I love Brussels sprouts. You know what I hate?
Something off about it. Raisins. Also hate raisins.
See, you are totally still like a 12-year-old.